Hello everybody, this is Enchantress here. We focus on budget magic on this channel, and today I am bringing you a budget deck tech on Lynde Cheerful Tormentor. Lynde Cheerful Tormentor is a 1 blue-black-red 2/4 human warlock with death touch. Whenever a curse is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return it to the battlefield attached to you at the beginning of the next end step. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may attach a curse attached to you to one of your opponents. If you do, draw 2 cards. Lynde is a very, very unique commander in my opinion. She is the first commander to specifically mention curses and give you a benefit for playing mostly curses. There are a few commanders out there who specifically want to give other things that you own to other players, but Lynde is the very first one to specifically be built around curses. And in this deck, I want to be upfront with you guys. This is more of a political build. The way I build Lynde is I wanted it to be more political, just because I find that gameplay very fun, and I also don't necessarily want to be the bad guy, which is what happens when you play a lot of curses. And also the way Lynde is written is that if you stack all your curses on one certain player and that player loses, all those curses become attached to you. And you can only get rid of one at a time, so this just paints an even larger target on your back. So I think this deck likes to spread the love a little bit. That way you can at least slowly move curses around as well, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But you want to spread the love just so all the curses don't come back on you all at once. Alright, first off, we'll start by getting our rocks off. Coalition Relic taps, add 1 mana of any color. You can also tap it and put a charge counter on Coalition Relic. This just gives you an extra mana the next turn in case you don't really need the mana boost now, but you'll need an extra little bit later. Commander Sphere taps, add 1 mana of any color of your commander's identity. Sacrifice Commander Sphere, draw a card. Mostly we'll use the draw effect later in the game after we've established our board and make sure that we have plenty of mana fixing. Midnight Clock, 2 and a blue. Tap, add a blue, 2 and a blue, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. At the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. When this card has 12 counters, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards, exile Midnight Clock. You can go ahead and take this card out if you would like, if you do not like the wheel effect, but from my experience, more often than not, you will be very glad that this trigger happened and that you have fresh gas in your hand and just get rid of any dead cards. More likely than not, a majority of the time, you'll be very, very thankful that this effect went off. Prismatic Lens taps, adds a colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap and then add 1 mana of any color. This is great again for the slight mana fixing. We are a 3-color commander and we are on a budget, so there's not a whole lot of dual colored lands in this deck. Card draw, Claws of Gix. Pay 1, sacrifice a permanent, you gain 1 life. Looking at this card, it might not click why this is such a great card draw engine for us, but let's say right before the opponent's end step, you can pay 1, sacrifice a curse. It then gets attached to you because it's the end of the end step, and then during your upkeep you can pass it on and draw 2 cards. So this is great for not only giving you a very, very strong and consistent outlet for card draw. It also lets you kind of rearrange your curses if there's a new bad guy on the table. Fevered Visions, one blue and a red. At the beginning of each player's end step, that player draws a card. If the player is your opponent and has 4 or more cards in hand, Fevered Visions deals 2 damage to him or her. Like I said, this is a political deck. This is a tool that people really won't mind taking the 2 damage to just draw an extra card. But to us, that added damage throughout the game will really add up after a while, especially with our other ping effects. Loyal Drake, 2 and a blue. At the beginning of your combat, if you control your commander, draw a card. 90% of the time we want our commander on the battlefield just so we can get that access to reuse all of our curses. Nesisal Primal Tide is a great finisher. 5 blue. You have no maximum hand size, can't be countered. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you draw a card, and then you can toss 3 cards and get Nesihal back onto your field in case someone wants to remove it or a board wipe happened. Kumina's Awakening, 2 blue. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. If you have the City's Blessing, instead only you draw a card. We play a ton of enchantments in this deck, as you can see already. And more often than not, we're going to hit the City's Blessing very, very quickly. Thirst for Meaning, 2 and a blue, draw 3 cards, discard an enchantment, and then you get a +2. Arc of Orzka, tap adds a colorless, or you can pay 5 and tap and draw a card. You can only do this if you have the City's Blessing. Again, we are going to hit the City's Blessing very, very quickly in this deck. Cursed. Let's start off for what you all you guys came here for. So Curse of Bloodletting, 3 red. If a source would deal damage to enchanted player, it deals double that damage to that player instead. This is a fantastic curse. All these curses really just put a huge target on a particular opponent, and I will kind of be skipping that fact for the rest of these unless there's a very specific target you want to put on these. Curse of Chaos, 2 and a red. Whenever a player attacks enchanted player with 1 or more creatures, that attacking player may discard a card. If the player does, he or she draws a card. Curse of Death's Hold, 3 black. Enchant player. Creatures enchanted player controls get -1/-1. Specifically, you want to put this on anyone who has a token strategy or anyone who has a like low to the ground tribe, such as elves, humans, goblins, possibly even merfolk, depending on the situation. Curse of Disturbance, 2 and a black. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. This also provides you with blockers to make you a less appetizing target. Curse of Echoes, 4 and a blue. Whenever an enchanted player casts an instant or sorcery spell, each other player may copy that spell and may choose new targets for the copy he or she controls. You slap this on your opponent. You slap this on your Spellslinger opponent, and it just shuts them out of the game. Curse of Fool's Wisdom, 4 black. Whenever an enchanted player draws a card, they lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. Card draw is a very important mechanic, obviously, in Commander, and more than likely you will be throwing this on, again, probably your opponent, and they'll gain you a ton of life, and they'll slowly just take themselves out of the game. Curse of Inertia, 2 and a blue. Whenever a player attacks enchanted player with one or more creature. That attacking player may tap or untap target permanent of his or her choice. Just get the biggest blocker they have out of the way. Curse of Leeches, 2 and a black. As this permanent transforms into a Curse of Leeches, attach it to a player. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, they lose 1 life and you gain 1 life. Nightbound, it turns into a 4/4 lifelink. The great part about this is that if for some reason this gets destroyed and attached to you, you don't have to worry about it as much as your other curses, because once it flips to Leeching Lurker, it can then flip back, and then you can just freely attach it to whoever you want whenever it becomes daybound. So that is a very interesting reaction. Interaction. I would not waste your 1 detach effect from you on Curse of Leeches. Curse of Misfortunes, 4 and a black. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library for a curse card that does not have the same name as a curse attached to enchanted player. Put it onto the battlefield, attached to that player, then shuffle your library. This is where a majority of our budget has gone, and is to this 1 card. Not only does it search for a specific tutor that you want at any given time, you can find any answer you want for a given situation. It also cheats it into play. This is a tremendous value engine off of our commander right here. Curse of Oblivion, 3 and a black. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player exiles 2 cards from his or her graveyard. You more than likely want to attach this on a reanimation style deck. It will kind of slowly dwindle their resources. It will also hopefully hit their bigger creatures eventually, but like I said, this just slowly takes away at their resources, and that's all you need. Curse of Shaken Faith, 1 in a red. Whenever enchanted player casts a spell other than the first spell they cast each turn, Curse of Shaken deals 2 damage to this. What you want to use this on is your combo players. You stack this onto your combo player, and then they have to either get their plays done within 20 cards, or they have to deal with this first and then do their game plan. So this either delays them, or it can just outright kill them if they forget about this. Curse of Shallow Graves, 2 and a black. Whenever a player attacks enchanted player with 1 or more creatures, that attacking player may put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. Curse of Stalked Prey, 1 in a red. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to an enchanted player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Curse of Surveillance. Jeez. 4 and a blue. Enchant player. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, any number of target players other than the player each draws cards equal to the number of curses attached to that player. Again, like I said, this is a group, not a group HUD commander. This is a political commander. You can pick and choose who your friends are in this situation, and more than likely this can draw you 3 or 4 cards very, very easily. Curse of Thirst, this is just a draining effect. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, Curse of Thirst deals damage to that player equal to the number of curses attached to him or her. Curse of Verbrosity, 2 and a blue. Whenever an enchanted player is attacked, you draw a card. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. Curse of Wizardry, 2 black. As Curse of Wizardry enters the battlefield, choose a color. Whenever a player casts a spell of the chosen color, that player loses 1 life. You stick this on a mono-green or a mono-colored commander, and this just slowly takes them out of the game. Whatever they play will take you out, or will take them out eventually. And even if they deal with this card, it gets attached to you. You can choose green because you're not going to be playing green cards, and then it just does nothing, and then you can just slowly put it right back onto them at the beginning of your next upkeep after they've already dealt with this. This is a very mean curse. Curse of the Bloody Tome. 2 and a blue. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So this is a great card. Number one, it can just slowly mill someone out, or if you want to have a friend, you choose the reanimation deck and use it as a political tool and be like, hey, I'll give you this free way to mill if you target me last. And that way you have a friend throughout the entire game of Commander. Curse of the Nightly Hunt. 2 and a red. Creature's enchanted player controls attack each turn of Fable. This mainly really hurts decks that have a lot to load the ground creatures that they want to protect. Like a mono white taxing deck, just because a lot of those effects are on creatures, or a combo deck. This is really mean for, because they've spent all game trying to get their very unique pieces out, and this can just completely ruin their game. Curse of the Pierced Heart. 1 and a red. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, Curse of Pierced Heart deals 1 damage to that player. This is probably the first curse I would remove if you want to upgrade this deck. Maddening Hex. 1 red red. Whenever enchanted player casts a non-creature spell, roll a d6. Maddening Hex deals damage to that player equal to the result, then attach Maddening Hex to another one of your opponent's chosen at random. This is a very interesting card. I love it personally. It usually does 3 to 4, like on average, like 3 to 4 damage. Again, I just really like this card. Torment of Scarabs. 3 and a black. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 3 life unless he or she sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. Trespasser's Curse. 1 and a black. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under enchanted player's control, that player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. You stick this on anyone who has a very creature or go wide strategy. You stick this on to someone who's producing a ton of tokens. You stick this on to someone who is playing goblins, and it'll just this card alone can slowly take out a several different opponents depending on what their deck is doing. Accursed Witch. 3 and a black. Spells your opponents cast that target a cursed witch cost 1 less to cast, and when it dies, return to the battlefield and attach it to target opponent. Accursed Witch turns into an Infectious Curse. Enchant player. Spells you cast that target enchanted player cost 1 less to cast. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This is a fancy curse, and if someone has a burn spell or something like that, this can lower the cost and make this person in particular a more appetizing target than you or your commander. Teferi's Curse. This does not trigger Lynde. I have to stress this. I just like this card. It's almost a pet card. I think it is a very unique and mean way to get rid of someone's commander. Normally, I'm not a fan of taking someone's commander out, but depending on the threat level of that commander, this is a very fun or unique way to get rid of it. Play only on an artifact or creature. Enchanted permanent gains phasing. So phasing is a very old mechanic. So what it does is that at the beginning of your upkeep, it either phases in or out. If it phases in, it's there, and it's there till your next upkeep. But if it phases out, it disappears from the board state. It keeps all its counters. It keeps everything about. It keeps its equipment and attachment. But the thing is that it phases out, and it's not there until the next upkeep, and then it comes back in. So this is a very annoying card, and it's very hard to interact with. They have to have an answer for this card on the particular turn that their commander is phased in. So it is a very annoying card, and it can just instantly shut down any strategies that a certain commander has. And as I said, so we are doing a little bit of a political game, and we definitely do not want to be the target, especially if we are kind of pissing off multiple players by spreading our curses. So we have a bunch of stay away effects. Blood Reckoning. 3 and a black, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller loses 1 life. Circle of Flame. 1 and a red. Whenever a creature without flying attacks you or a planeswalker you control, Circle of Flame deals 1 damage to that creature. This gets rid of all the low creatures and also lets you block more successfully. Dissipation Field. 2 blue. Whenever a permanent deals damage to you, return it to its owner's hand. This is a very great card. You can actually even use this as a political tool. And let's say your buddy has a very awesome enter the battlefield effect, and he really wants to get it in. If it is a low to the ground creature, you can have him swing into you, let it through, and then that gives them the ability to play that again to get that awesome enter the battlefield effect. Everwatching Threshold. 2 and a blue. Whenever an opponent attacks you or a planeswalker you control with 1 or more creatures, draw a card. Hissing Miasma. 1 black. Whenever a creature attacks you, its controller loses 1 life. Revenge of Ravens. 3 and a black. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And then Monastery Siege. 2 and a blue. As Monastery Siege enters the battlefield, choose cons or dragons. We are interested in the dragon effect. Spells your opponents cast that target you or opponent you control cost 2 more to cast. Just having this out will make people want to use their removal on other permanents, just because it is not as mana efficient. So 90% of the time, unless there is a very, very problematic card for their game plan, this just can almost as a pseudo hexproof, just because people will really not want to use that extra 2 mana. Alright, Constellation. Blankcaster is a 3 and a black human wizard. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you may have target creature get -2/-2 till end of turn. This is a very great way to pick off key units such as lords or mana dorks. It is just a very efficient card in this deck. Agent of Erebos, 3 and a black. Whenever Agent of Erebos or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. This can really, really just ruin a reanimation target's day. Just this card alone can just easily counter a Moldrova deck. Forgeborn Oreads, 2 red. Whenever Forgeborn or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, Forageborn deals 1 damage to target player or creature. So again, this can ping off the little guys just in case. You can even use this as like a pseudo combat trick after you attack in, and let's say their blocker lived with 1 health. You can play an enchantment in your second main phase and take it out. There's just a very wide range of options that you have for a pinger, and that's what this is. Grim Guardian, 2 and a black. Whenever Grim Guardian or another enchantment enters the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. This is just a drain effect. And then arguably one of the better cards in the deck is Protean Thaumaturge. 1 and a blue. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Protean Thaumaturge become a copy of another target creature, except it has this ability. You can just steal a Nyxbloom agent, and now all of your mana that you tap now taps for triple. You can play this and get a Blightsteel Colossus. There's just so many options, and you can just always have the best creature on the field. And like I said, it's just an amazing card. It is probably at least in the top 5 cards of this deck. Daxos' Torment, 3 and a black. Whenever Daxos' Torment or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, Daxos' Torment becomes a 5/5 demon creature with flying and haste in addition to its other types until end of turn. This is the card that I would probably also replace if you are looking at upgrading this deck. I personally like it just because it gets you a little bit faster clock on some of your opponents, and possibly even a blocker if needed, if you have a flash enchantment. Okay, we're going to go on to our Enchantress strategies. Aphima the Cacophony, 1 and a black. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile an enchantment card from your graveyard. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. This is just a great way to get extra value in case of any of our other enchantment creatures die. Arbiter of the Ideal, 4 blue. Whenever Arbiter of the Ideal becomes untapped, reveal the top card of your library. If it's an artifact, creature, or land, you may put it onto the battlefield with a manifestation counter on it. That permanent is an enchantment in addition to its other types. So this is here just because it gets us value, and it also procs our constellation effects. Bitter Heart Witch, 4 and a black. When Bitter Heart Witch dies, you may search your library for a curse card and put it onto the battlefield attached to target player, then shuffle your library. This is a tutor that also cheats it onto the battlefield. This is a great card. We could then get our other tutor and then just from then on just be tutoring every single turn. It is a very great card, and I love this. This is probably, again, maybe top 5. Brineheart Giant, 6 and a blue. The spell costs 1 less for each enchantment you control. We are going to have a ton of enchantments, so this can just be a 5/6 for 1 mana, or more than likely maybe 2 or 3. This card can easily go and be an upgrade option as well. I just like it just because it usually ends up being a very cheap blocker. Calfee, Beloved of the Sea, 1 blue. Calfee's power is equal to your devotion to blue. Creatures and enchantments you control have spells your opponent's cast that target this spell cost 1 more to cast. This is a pseudo ward effect for literally everything that you have. It is a very, very rare that we're actually going to be attacking with Calfee, just because the toughness doesn't increase. It's just the power, so it's very easy to remove in that situation if you attack with her. But the pseudo ward effect for literally everything on your board is a very great effect. Moonlit Scavengers, 5 and a blue. whenever it enters the battlefield, if you control an artifact or enchantment, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. This could be used as a political tool. Get a very, very good enter the battlefield trigger off of the field so your friend can play it again, or more than likely this will just get rid of the biggest threat for another round. And then here we have some utility creatures. Combustible Gear Hulk for 4 red, first strike. Whenever Combustible Gear Hulk enters the battlefield, target opponent may have you draw 3 cards. If that player doesn't, you mill 3 cards. Then Combustible Gear Hulk deals damage to that player equal to the total mana value. This is either a possible finisher, or more than likely, I would love to use it as a political tool and have your friend just have you draw the 3 cards. That's a majority of the way I would use this card, but it can technically be a finisher. Jehessian Zombies for blue and a black. It is 90% here for the island walking, or island cycling and swamp cycling. Just helps fixes your mana, and in a way that's great. Archway Common fixes your mana, same with Command Tower. Opal Palace is a very niche card. If people are just really tired of your commander can just get huge off of this card, because it just gives +1/+1 counters equal to the number of times your commander's been cast. And then Eel Umbra is a 1 in a blue, flash enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchant creature gets +1/+1. But the most important part is totem armor. This gives your commander a one-time undying effect. If enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. This is a 1 get out of jail free card. This is a great way to protect Lynde, just in case if people are just really tired of her. Like I said, this is just a very great and cheap and very on theme protection for our commander. And here we move on to some blue shenanigans. We don't play a lot of counter spells, but we do like to have the option if needed. Disdainful Stroke, 1 in a blue, counter target spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater. This is a great card, just because more than likely the spells that you want to counter are going to be a larger CMC to begin with. So this is just a great option. Negate, counter target non-creature spell. Neutralize, counter target spell, but it also has cycling in case you really need to find a different card. And then Stern Dismissal, return target creature or enchantment and opponent controls to its owner's hand. Again, this could be used politically, or more likely we'll just get a threat off the board till the next turn. Alright, so Lynde Cheerful Tormentor. Let's look at the value of our budget deck. On Card Kingdom, this is about $47. And TCG Player, this is $44. That does not include shipping, however. So based on the shipping, you might get a better deal off of Card Kingdom, and you'll have to see what is the better value for you. The average deck cost, I could not find any other decks for Lynde Cheerful Tormentor. There is 0 decks on EDH Rec, and so I guess the average would be 45.5 or $45.50, as that's the average between Card Kingdom and TCG Player. So I am very proud of this deck. I love it. I love the gameplay. I love the political back and forth you can have with this deck. Alright, so since this is the budget deck, let's go into some upgrades. Curse of Obsession, 4 and a red, enchant player. At the beginning of enchanted player's draw step, that player draws 2 additional cards. At the beginning of enchanted player's end step, that player discards their hand. This is a very, very mean card. You can play that on a person who wants to play nothing but big mana spells, and they're just kind of SOL after that. Curse of Opulence, just a one red. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, create a colorless artifact token named Gold. It has sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. This is a very, very, very strong card. It is honestly very mean. This will get a player out of the game in no time. Curse of Vengeance, for 1 black. Whenever enchanted player casts a spell, put a spike counter on Curse of Vengeance. When enchanted player loses the game, you gain X life and draw X card, where X is the number of spike counters on Curse of Vengeance. This is just a very powerful draw effect, in my opinion. More than likely, I'm not the biggest fan of this, just because it doesn't give you value right away. It's more of a payoff down the line. Cruel Reality, 5 black. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If that can't, he or she loses 5 life. So this is a very great card. For the love of God, do not attach this to a token strategy person, or else you're going to have a very bad time, as they can just sack a 1/1 token that they've created 12 turns ago and still have 100 more on the field. You want to attach this to the control player and very quickly get them out of the game, or just a player who doesn't have a very creature-focused deck. Cards to remove, again, I've said this, Curse of the Pierced Heart, Daxos' Torment, Teferi's Curse. Even though I love this card, I know that some people don't like targeting other people's commanders, or that the removal isn't quite up to snuff in their opinion. I understand. And then Brine Giant. Alright, so lore. Lynde, Cheerful Tormentor. If you look very carefully at the voodoo doll in her hands, it is the character in the Curse series. This character is titled the Unluckiest Planeswalker, and we don't know why Lynde has such a grudge against them. We hopefully will find out soon, but the Unluckiest Planeswalker obviously has had a very, very bad time. I hope we get more cards that show him, because as far as I know, these are the only 6.5 cards that actually show him on there. So I'm very excited to see what the reason that Lynde just absolutely hates this guy. So yeah, I hope you definitely enjoyed this deck. I will go back up to the value. Again, I am very proud of this deck. I am honestly very shocked that not more people have played around with this deck. I will leave the deck list in the description, and I appreciate any support, any comments or critiques. Any likes would be definitely appreciated. Again, till next time, thank you guys so much.